Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast. By the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Kurt Leavins. Welcome, Kurt.
Hello. Trying to convince myself that the hockey season's over and that it's summertime.
Oh, are you? Are you done with hockey? Are you kind of tired
Well,
of it, or?
yeah, it's, as much as you're proud of your team getting to the final again, there's a certain amount of sting that goes with it. And I find walking in the woods or being on the water is a good way to get over it.
Do you find yourself ruminating about it, Kurt, a lot, or thinking about it,
Yeah,
or?
you know what I do. It's I'm rolling the whole season, the past two seasons over in my head, I find, and I'm unusually preoccupied with this postseason for whatever reason. So I guess it's because the narrative is so fascinating this summer. Like, what do they have to do to get back there a third consecutive time? Is the window closing? There's all those questions out there, right?
Let's start there. Let's say there's two things, one or two things they have to do. Like, what do you think? What do you think? So Bowman laid it out. He's look at the forwards, look at the goalies. What would you say they've got to do? Because I have a solid idea. I could be wrong, but I have an idea. But go ahead.
Yeah, I tend to agree with him when it comes to the defense. If you're going to do anything with the defense, you do it at the deadline. Otherwise, I think this is quite a good blue line. Not perfect, but quite good. I do think that they need. I do think they need to find someone to play in the top six on the wing. And I know it's ironic, and we're going to talk about Evander Kane in a minute, but I do think that's one of their major needs, right? I think Leon Draisaitl needs a real winger. And after two full seasons of being on the Stuart Skinner train, I'm still not off the Stuart Skinner train, but I think I've either convinced myself or been convinced by others that we need an additional solution, if not a different solution, in net to get over the hump. So top six winger, goalie of some description.
I think they lost to Florida because of goaltending. Bobrovsky was better in 4 out of 6 games, maybe 5 out of 6 games. He was a better goaltender in that series. Now, in the other series, as Bowman said, the Oilers were better in, well, he said all three. I think Kemper was better than the Oilers goalies in the first series. But overall, but I'll give them two, Vegas and Dallas. They were better than the highly touted goalies. Nonetheless, 2 years in a row, I think Bobrovsky's been the better goalie. And so I'm looking there. And I think that the main problem against Florida was the Oilers' lack of speed up front. They couldn't get on the Florida players to forecheck. They couldn't scare them with their speed like they had done the previous year. They came back in that series, I think, because of a number of players, Janmark, Fogle, McDavid, cranked up the speed, Connor Brown, and it made a difference against Florida the year before. It was the difference in the Oilers being able to come back. They just couldn't do it. They didn't have the speed. They lost Fogle, McLeod, Holloway. They lost Hyman to injury, and then they lost Connor. I think they essentially lost Connor Brown's speed too, because he was playing, I think, with a broken toe, which is known, and I think he wasn't right after that hit to the head.
Agreed.
So they were down 5 fast wingers essentially. And, they picked up some guys some of them were not slow. Kane was obviously faster this year than last year. But, man, you've got to get after Florida. You've got to go around them. You've got to blitz that team. Because their defense it's good, but it's beatable. And you can get in on those guys. And they just failed to do it. So, we can start off. This is why I didn't like the Evander Kane move today. You have a winger who is capable of getting in there and landing big. He's, I've described him as fast. People take exception to that. Fair enough. I think he's above average NHL speed, but he's fast enough to get in there and hammer NHL defensemen. He's fast enough to get in there and hammer Quinn Hughes, Miro Heiskanen. You can't tell me he's a slow player. He's got that speed, that closing speed on big hits. And after you've lost a big hitter like Holloway, a big, fast, young power forward like Holloway, after you've lost Warren Fogle, who's physical, doesn't lay big hits, but he's physical and was fast and caused the Oilers all kinds of trouble in the first round. McLeod wasn't physical, but he was super fast. And then the loss of Hyman was, of course, devastating. But then now you're getting rid of Kane. And so I understand the salary cap implications. And I'll be okay if they use this cap space wisely and bring in players that make sense. But right now, in this moment, I don't like the move. They just lost what they need. A big, fast, aggressive forward who can get it on the forecheck and cause trouble. What's your
Well,
take?
it's funny that you should put it that way. I'm being thoroughly entertained by all the anger in Vancouver from people who are just ticked off that they've got Evander Kane, and I'm thinking to myself, geez, I'm kind of sorry he's gone. Like it's, you know, you can have all of the virtual signaling opinions you want about Evander Kane. If you think he's a rotten person, well then you think he's a rotten person. But don't try to tell me he wasn't an effective player, because he was. And he is a unique player by today's standards for sure. I agree with you. He has power forward speed. Is he blazing fast? Maybe not, but
No.
sufficient speed to get effectively in on the forecheck.
Yeah.
And to make those hits hurt even more. I understand the business reason behind Evander Kane leaving, but I'm sorry to see him go. He was effective. He was effective when he was healthy. And so who knows what's going to go in, because who knows what works and doesn't in Vancouver, right? And I think the thing here is, I'm not so sure that the $5.1 million they're going to save on Kane is going to bring a whole lot of new in, because a lot of the money that they have, because I mean, the cap right now is what, 16.2 is their current cap space. Well, most of that's already spent, right? Between the new Draisaitl contract, the coming Bouchard
That's factored
contract.
into the six. Kurt,
It's
just to
factored
stop you
in.
quickly.
I know that.
Yeah.
But the Bouchard money isn't, and it's going to be
Yeah.
not a little bit more. It's going to be a lot more.
What
I
did he
don't
make?
think.
4 million. So
Yeah,
it's going to be it'll be
it's
at least 6 million more, right?
it'll be double
He's
digits,
getting
right?
10 at
It'll be
least.
at least 10, no matter what the term.
Yeah.
So I
So
mean,
6
boom,
million.
there's
So that's 6 million of that. Yeah.
right. It's gone right off the bat, and then the other
Frederick
thing
is
that's
4.
not, Frederick's not factored in either, so that's going to be close to 4.
Yeah.
So there's 10 of the 16 gone, right? And so if you're
Then
going to
they
get a
move. If
goal,
they move. Yeah.
yeah, if you're
If they
going to
move
get
out
a goalie
Arvidsson.
that's any good, Dave, then you're out of money. So it's
So
I
I
you
get the
know
business too. Yeah.
yeah. So but I think you and I see the player the same way. This was when healthy, a highly effective player, and the kind of player that the Oilers needed, and now they don't have him anymore. So I'm with you in those feelings.
So I think we're getting strong hints from the mainstream media guys like Mark Spector about another issue with Kane, that he causes drama, and that there was drama with Kane on the Oilers. I mean, that is being signaled by the mainstream media, people who are close to the team, who would know that kind of thing.
Would they though?
They don't
Those
come out and say it, Kurt, but they say, Spector did. He said, this guy causes too much drama. They don't say what it is, but they do say that. So here's what,
I
there's
guess
all
I
these
guess you
rumors.
know what, Dave? I trust the guys that ride the plane and the bus with the players. With all due respect to Mark and the other guys, it's I don't know, from the people I talk to. While Evander Kane is a unique individual, there is no question about that. I'm not hearing any stories about any of the Oilers veterans saying they wanted this guy out. So
My take on all this stuff, all this noise, and there's been noise ever since he got here, and then rumors of this, and like he's, this hassle, that hassle.
yeah.
I put all of these stories could be true, but they're not credible. They're not credible. There's no name source usually, and there's no specific there's not specifics. So it could all be true, but yeah, I can't put any weight in it. So
Yeah.
all I put weight in, Kurt, is performance on the ice. And what I put specific weight in is playoff performance. And what I've seen the last 2 years, when Kane's been healthy, last year against Los Angeles and Vancouver, he was a crucial player, and the Oilers might not have won either of those series without Evander Kane blasting the Kings defense and blasting Nikita Zadorov, who was intimidating the Oilers, and Kane stood up to him. This year I saw Kane blast through LA again, score a massive goal where he essentially willed the puck into the net. I saw him go at Vegas and scare the hell out of those guys, and I saw him hitting Dallas defenders. He wasn't good against Florida, and people bring that up. Who was? Who was good on the Oilers against Florida?
Yeah,
Like
honestly.
And
I think in part the referees took him out of that series, David.
oh,
Honestly, all the calls, some of which he deserved. Don't get me wrong, but I think after a while, I think the same thing happened to Corey Perry. Like at some point, those guys said, "Well, I don't want to go to the box again," and so I think they pulled back, to be perfectly honest. And so I think that's why one reason why we didn't see the full Evander in that final series.
as Don Cherry put it, and Don Cherry just retired, by the way, so
I saw that. Yeah,
long and great career comes to an end. But Don Cherry said it was the worst refereeing he's ever seen. I agree. I can give you 5 goals that came after missed penalty calls. And if there's Florida Panthers fans here who say this morning, I challenge you to give me 1 or 2 or 3 goals that the Oilers scored that came after missed calls against the Oilers. There was at least 4 egregious calls and one Arvidsson's
the too many men missed call.
The too many men missed call, which was related, but not directly. But there was 4 directly related penalties to goals being scored. And maybe that's just bad timing, but it happened. And that for me, that was the other big impact. I can't look at that series. There's goaltending, Oilers' inability to get on the forechecking, and then unbelievably atrocious refereeing, incompetent refereeing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
even if you want to call it bad luck, it was still a major factor.
A lot of bad luck. Yeah, I'll call it bad luck, but it's a lot of bad luck, and it had a huge impact.
It did.
And you can say shake it off. Good teams have to shake it off. They do, but that is a lot to shake off. Yep. Kurt, we're going to go down a list of players who are on the bubble for the Oilers, and we're going to do keep, hold, or fold. So keep means you want to keep the player. Hold means you want to, hold them for now, maybe see what happens and then move them this summer. And fold is move them out now. Victor Arvidsson, keep, hold, or fold?
Fold. I think team and player are looking for a second opinion. I think him getting scratched a couple times in the playoffs was kind of him thinking he needed to go for a better opportunity. I don't know where he's going to get a better opportunity than playing 3/4 of the season with Leon Draisaitl, but I'm not going to criticize the signing because when we signed him, I thought it was a good signing. It just didn't work out. Spend the $4 million somewhere else.
Not so easy to play with Leon Draisaitl, Kurt. Who's going out the door? Kane played with Leon Draisaitl. Arvidsson played with Leon Draisaitl. Jeff Skinner was supposed to play with Leon Draisaitl. Never made it there. It's not such an easy thing. Evidently, like they're not.
I hear what you're saying. For years, when people say, "Oh, my grandmother could score 20 goals playing with Connor McDavid," really good players are hard to play with. The fact that people think they're easy to play with is total bullshit. Good players are hard to play with. And you see that proven over and over again. Although Vasily Podkolzin seemed to play quite well with Leon Draisaitl. So
he did. And that maybe is the kind of player they need to find. Or they could move Leon to the wing and playing with Connor McDavid next year. That's your top line. Yep. And Ryan Nugent-Hopkins looked to me like he might be a center. And I think that should be a serious consideration from the Oilers. And it's nothing and it's because of RNH's development as a center and the fact that Draisaitl and McDavid are now proving again to be really good together. So I'm not against loading up having a top line necessarily in going in that direction. Kurt, I'm going to say with Arvidsson, because, listen, we've had news telegraphed from insiders all week long that Arvidsson's wanting to move his no-move contract and his no-movement clause and is willing to do so and is looking to go elsewhere. So that looks like it's in the cards. So I'm okay with that. If the player doesn't want to be here, it's time to move on. So I'm going to also go with fold on Arvidsson. That said, I think Arvidsson was a decent two-way hockey player this year. He was decent in the playoffs. I don't have a problem with how he played. He had pretty bad puck luck, and he was probably down. He's down from his peak. He's not a peak. He's not. But I think that his two-way play wasn't bad this year. And if they had the cap space and the money and they did, I'm okay with Victor Arvidsson. He'd be great on your. I think he's a great third line winger. Like he's a good two-way hockey player. I don't mind him. I think he'd be a good pickup for another team. I think at $4 million, yeah, he might come on and score 20, 25 goals for a team as a second line winger. If he gets some power play time, especially. And so yeah, I like the player, and I think just like I like Kane, and good deal for Vancouver, and I think whoever gets Victor Arvidsson's going to be happy as well.
Yeah.
Corey Perry, keep, hold, or fold?
Keep with an asterisk. After the season he had, and after the various things that he brings to this hockey team, off the ice, on the ice, in the crease, behind the net, I think it's incumbent upon the club to try and bring him back. The trick is, what do you pay him? And I think that's where you have to be careful, because as good as his season was, it's historic in a number of ways, you got to be really careful what you pay him, because regression is just around the corner.
So what are the rumors about his pay, Kurt? What are we hearing?
Well, I'm hearing that his camp is hoping for somewhere between 2 and 2.5. And I know that 2 to 2.5 number was floated on our friend Bob Stauffer's show a couple of days ago. I'm not so sure that's what the Oilers want to pay him. But I do think that's what the Perry camp is thinking he could probably earn elsewhere, given the season that he had. But this isn't elsewhere. This is Edmonton. This is a chance to win the Stanley Cup. I think if he's willing to come back for $1 million, $1.1 million, great. But if it's getting much higher than that, I think danger.
So hold. You're a hold.
Yeah, I guess I'm officially a hold because of the salary. If he was just asking for a $1 million a season or $1.2 million or something, I'd take him. But given the questioning over the salary, I'll put a hold on him for now.
So I thought Corey Perry was really good in the playoffs until he met Florida, and then he was part of the problem. Like, he's too slow to get in on the forecheck. He was smart enough to do well, especially defensively. Look, as a two-way player, altogether against Dallas and Vegas and the other teams, but against Florida, like, man, he was part of the problem. And again, I gave Kane the benefit of the doubt, who was good. There was a few good players. RNH, I thought, was really good against Florida, even playing with a broken hand. I thought he played some of the best playoff hockey of his career.
I thought he was their best forward.
Was okay against Florida.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he was too. So Podkolzin was okay-ish, but there wasn't a lot. But anyway, I don't see Perry being the answer for Florida. They got to get more speed. So if he's willing to take fourth line winger pay, then you keep him. If he's not, if he wants to get second or third line winger pay, then he's got to go to another city. And it could be, in terms of beating Florida, maybe like some addition from subtraction. And that's a harsh thing to say about someone who played so well last year and in the playoffs. But for that specific, cracking that particular nut, which is the job right now, like this is the mountain you got to climb. And I'm just not sure that Perry's the right guy to help you do that at this point. He just doesn't have the wheels to get in there and press like you need to press if you're going to beat Florida.
See, I think that's fair enough, but I'm not super focused on beating Florida. There's a whole lot of bridges you need to cross before you possibly come up against them again. And Corey Perry was more than serviceable for the regular season and 3 rounds of the postseason. My concern is strictly on age, price, and possible regression. That's my concern. If we get to the Stanley Cup final and Corey Perry's on this team again, I'm not worried about that. But I am worried about him getting there and being a shadow of his former self. So
Jeff Skinner, keep, hold, or fold?
Fold. And I'm sorry to say that, because you know what? I think Jeff Skinner was not the best match for this hockey team. I put that on Jeff Jackson, who was the acting general manager when he was signed. Um, um, he wanted a chance to win a cup. He got a chance to win a cup here, but certainly the year couldn't have gone the way he had hoped. And frankly, the first half of the season was on him. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't good enough offensively, and he was leaky defensively. Halfway through the season, either the light bulb went on in his head or someone turned it on for him. And his defensive plays, defensive responsibility improved markedly. Certainly not perfect. I mean, you still saw mistakes from him. He's never gonna win a Selke. But he was more than competent defensively, and he started to produce offensively. I've had the thought, if Jeff Skinner played this way from the start of the season, things might have gone a little differently for him, if not for the team. But they didn't. They won't. And I don't see him signing $1 million contract to come back to Edmonton, because someone out there will give him 2 or 3, because he can probably still score 15, 20 goals on the power play for a bottom 16 team.
So I'm going to say hold, because I think he might. Like, I'm not sure there's that contract out there for him. There might be, there might not be. He didn't have great numbers this year. But from what I saw, he played, when he played in the playoffs, he played well. And he was digging in there. He was tenacious. He was aggressive, and he's got skill. And when I hear Bob Stauffer talk on the air about the Oilers' top 6 going into next season, top line, Zach Hyman, Connor McDavid, and Adam Henrique. And second line, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Leon Draisaitl, and Matthew Savoy. I think there's every possibility that Jeff Skinner could be a better player in those top line situations than Savoy or Henrique. Like, he certainly is more proven and more recently a top 6 forward than either of those guys. And if you can get him for the right price, which is like $1.2 million or whatever, yeah, I would say hold. And maybe he wants to do that. Maybe he's thinking, yeah, if I just started out the way I finished, I could have made an impact on this team. And I've impressed that on the coach. I've now impressed that on my teammates. And I can do this. So I'm definitely in the hold camp. And if he's willing to sign here on a decent contract, why not? Because again, Savoy is completely, he's unproven, and he's got a lot of talent, and he's fast, but he's aggressive. I like a lot about him, but I'm not against competition. And if Skinner's willing to sign that contract that doesn't kill you on the cap, which is like what $1.2 million does, I say hold on him.
Guess we'll see.
Casperry, he's probably going elsewhere. I agree with you, though. He could probably get $1.8 million or $2 million, but it maybe he's willing to take less because he's made like a lot of money, Kurt. Like, if it's a difference, let's say between $1.2 million in Edmonton and $1.8 million somewhere else, maybe he'll just think, hey, let's try this again. And it depends on how he ended up with the coach, frankly. And I don't know that. That's something that I don't know.
Yeah, and I can't say that I saw a whole lot of trust displayed on the coach's part when it came to Skinner. So Kapanen.
No, neither did I.
Yeah, so Kapanen. I'm torn on Kapanen, so I guess I'll say hold on that. As you'll know in my year-end article, he's one of the guys I suggested, I think they can move on from. And the reason I said that is because there is going to be players of his ilk that are available for free on waivers all season long. So I think what the Oilers need to decide is whether that is true, or whether they think, well, actually, no, we think this guy is potentially a little bit better than what we can find on waivers. We think we've got a hidden gem here, so maybe we'll keep him. I have no disagreement that Kasperi Kapanen has wheels. He can shoot hard. He can hit. He was 4th on the team in hits in the regular season this year, and he can PK a little bit. Like he ended up a useful player for the Oilers. And if he is going to sign for the league minimum, $1 million or less, I mean, I wouldn't kick up a fuss, but I stand by my initial comment, which is you can find these kind of players for free, and I don't mean any disrespect to that. All players in the NHL are talented players. They're there for a reason. But danger, danger, don't pay a cent more than you have to, because there are free guys just around the corner that aren't that much worse than Kasperi Kapanen.
He in the regular season, he and Skinner, I thought, were the weakest defensive wingers on the Oilers. Kapanen, known for his neutral zone turnovers and chaotic back checking, like he doesn't pick up the man very well sometimes. So, but in the playoffs, he really cranked it up. He's fast. He's physical. So if he's willing, again, if he's willing to sign for $1 million or $1.2 million, like I'm not sure what the cutoff is where you send a guy to the AHL and there's no longer a cap hit. I think it was $1.1 million last year, and I'm guessing with the cap going up, it will be a little higher than that.
Yeah.
So somewhere between $1.1 million. So let's say it's $1.2 million just for argument's sake. If he's willing to sign for that, then you sign him for sure. If not, if he wants more than that, then you say, okay, we'll move along.
Yeah,
and we'll try someone else. Trent Frederick, keep, hold, or fold?
Strong keep for me. I watched a decent amount of Trent Frederick before he became an Edmonton Oiler, enough to know that the guy that we watched after he arrived in Edmonton isn't the real Trent Frederick. I think some combination of high ankle sprain and broken foot in question marks is what not only slowed him down, but I also think affected his physical game, where he just wasn't able to go all the way through with his checks. When I saw him hit with Boston, he could punish with his checks. And as you correctly observed in the playoffs, David, while he was taking the body, he wasn't hurting anybody. And I think that was because he was held back by his limitations with his pins, with his legs. He is the right age. He matches up well with the core of this team. This team needs to get younger. He is younger, especially with Evander Kane gone now. You need someone with some sandpaper who's willing to drop the gloves every once in a while and isn't afraid to challenge the other guy's box. Frederick is that too. And he's got hands. He's scored close to 20 goals in back-to-back seasons with the Boston Bruins. There's no reason on earth why he couldn't have comparable production with the Edmonton Oilers. I'm nervous about the term that they're talking about with him, because that kind of player is susceptible to injury, but I have no issue with the money. I think you'd pay that or more for a similar player. I'm on board with Team Frederick.
I was a little, so because I just he didn't make a good impression on me in the playoffs. I'm trying not to put much weight in that, because I understand he was injured. And I really understand watching hockey all these years. Often when we think of players slumping or not playing well, it's because they're injured.
Yep.
So the question is, does he have the kind of injury which he can come back from? And I think he completely does. From the sounds of his injuries, they don't sound like the kind of injuries that really hamper a player long term. So, and when you look at his stats over the last 3 seasons, if you go back, you average this injured season with the 2 previous seasons, which I think is fair to do in terms of Frederick, because he's only 26, 27. He's not like in ages where you decline, right? So these are all peaks or near peak seasons for him. I think it's fair to look at all 3. When you look at that, he ranked in terms of being a power forward, and to come up with this ranking, it's just, I looked at their goals, their points, and their hits. It gave equal weighting to all 3 things and then averaged them. He was the 55th best forward in the NHL when you average those 3 things for the last 3 seasons at 5-on-5 play.
Divided by 32 teams, that's not bad.
Hyman was 34th, the best on the Oilers. McDavid, 41st, mainly on the strength of his goals and point scoring, of course. Mm-hmm. So listen, they've lost Kane. They've got to keep this guy. The long-term deal is to try to minimize his cap hit. Yeah. It takes him till he's 34. It's a risk. The deal is a risk in that way, Kurt. You're completely correct. He could easily get injured and burn out and not be a good player. But they're doing it to try to, they'll buy out the last years of the contract if it comes to that, I'm sure. But for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, and McDavid and Draisaitl's remaining years of their prime, he'll be good to go. So let's say he is the player you're talking about, the player that his stats suggest.
Mm-hmm.
I like this deal in that way. And the Oilers have a need here now. They need a tough, aggressive forward who can play higher up the lineup and be physical. So they have Hyman who does that, and now they'll have Frederick. Now maybe he's the third line center, maybe he's third line winger or second line winger. We'll see. Maybe Podkolzin plays up the lineup too, because Podkolzin can really hit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to need that up top, I think. Anyway, I'm definitely in the keep camp, and I would be more comfortable if this was like a 5-year deal or a 6-year deal.
You and me both.
8 seems a little long.
Yeah,
8 seems a little long.
Yeah.
But listen, they got a chance to win the cup now. They got and if this is the way they can get this guy for the next 3 or 4 years in his prime, his hockey prime, go for it, and let's see what happens.
And Dave, I was thinking about this too. A player of his type with relatively unique skills, and he's an American, and he's willing to sign long-term in Canada. That's a bit rare too, right? So that's a nice plus to have, that he wants to put roots down here.
Yeah, he did that Boston thing, and it soured, and I don't know why. It's interesting that it did, but it soured, evidently.
Well, there's a few players who
that's interesting.
Walked away. Yeah, a few players who walked away from that team not feeling good about it. Louis DeBrusk's kid.
That's right now. There might be maybe it's not the players, maybe it's the team, right?
Yeah,
the management.
There's something in the water in Boston right now.
Right now, yeah. Matthias Janmark, keep, hold, or fold. Now he has 1 year. He's got 2 years left on a contract that pays $1.5 million a year.
Yeah, with a limited no trade, right? Like a 10-team no trade. So it's I lean toward fold with him. I kind of feel like we got the best out of Matthias Janmark, and that might sound odd saying that, considering the first year he was here, we sent him to the minors. But you know what? In fairness to him, through the playoff run last year, he was effective. He was. So coming back, I had no issue with that. He just didn't look like the same player this year. He's still reasonably quick enough. He can still get around the ice okay. And in his defense, he spent a good chunk of the season playing out of position, playing center when he's not a natural center. That's hard to do. And so I have a difficult time grading a player based on that, because he's just doing what his coaches are asking him. But on a good Stanley Cup winning team, he is not a center. And I'm not sure he's even a winger on your team. So I lean toward fold. People say, oh, but he penalty kills. Well, our penalty kill was a freaking disaster this year. How is that a plus that you spent time on the penalty kill this year? And he can't score anymore. He's got decent speed. He's not really physical. It's like, I have respect for what he's brought, but it feels like the clock's ticking.
A big part of me wondered if Noah Philp, if he had been better developed this year, might have been a better option in the playoffs as the fourth line center.
I wondered the same.
And, a big guy who can get in there and make plays and hit. He was good when he played, I thought, and better than Janmark. But, Philp didn't play in the playoffs. Janmark was okay-ish in the playoffs and not good on the penalty kill. He was part of a not good penalty kill. If he gets sent to the minors, that might be where he belongs at this point. It doesn't cost you. He only makes $1.45 million a year. To send him to the minors isn't a huge blast against your cap, so you don't have to buy him out or anything. You can keep him around as insurance, but I think they should be thinking, no, we're replacing him, and we're going to bring in a better player. And if Janmark somehow beats him out if there's injuries, then we have him. But we're thinking of him in the minors this year. That's where he's going to be. Yeah. He doesn't have no movement clause. He's got a no trade clause. So I'm going to say fold in that regard. Like, don't plan on him being on your roster next year.
I think you're preaching to the choir with me.
He's been getting worse defensively every year too. Every year since he got here, his defensive numbers have gotten worse. He's leaking more grade A shots every single year, according to the work we do. John Klingberg, keep, hold, or fold?
Man, That's a tough one, because I think that John Klingberg will demand and get a decent contract out there with the play that he showed coming back in the playoffs. While he's not the John Klingberg of old, he's still a very smart, savvy player who can move the puck very effectively. I can think of 16 NHL teams that would give him a contract tomorrow to run their power play. And so while I would have John Klingberg back on a bargain deal, I think there's going to be money out there. And John Klingberg just walked away from a lucrative contract in Dallas. So he's been without a substantial paycheck for a while. So I think a good contract offer or two will speak loudly to him. If he wanted to sign for decent money, I'd have him back because I love how he transitions the puck. I just think there's going to be suitors with deeper pockets, and it's a buyer's market out there right now too. So I think there will be money in the marketplace.
What's the maximum you'd go? And it's hard to say because we don't know how all these other pieces are going to come together. But okay, if you had $2 million and you had to choose between Perry and Klingberg, who would you give it to?
Oh, geez. That's a good question.
Because I'm thinking 2 million's about the top end. Top end for me is about 2 million. Like, that's what I think.
See, Dave, before you asked me how much, you asked me how much, I was thinking 2. I think 2 would be a reasonable salary for Klingberg, and that's tough because keep in mind the Oilers also have Ty Emberson signed on the right side, who comes at a way lower cap hit than Klingberg would. So if you put it between him and Perry, that's a tougher question for me. But would I have Klingberg back on a $2 million contract? Sure. But I think someone will give him 3.5.
Well, you might be right about that, Kurt. He's like Kasperi Kapanen and Stetcher. They all started out strong in the playoffs and then they got weaker as it went along. All three of those guys, and a number of Oilers that happened for. But like they come to mind because they checked into they weren't initially playing, and then they all came in and they all did really well, and then they got weaker. But Klingberg was really good for the first 10 games of the playoffs.
He was.
And he can move that puck. He's a good skater. And I just wonder, like, with even more time now to rehab and get back at it, maybe he'll be that much better next year. So I'd love to see him. I'd like to see him back. I think he's a good player.
Yeah, and he and Wallman really seem to have natural chemistry with one another.
Yeah. I'll go hold because, again, it comes down to price. But I would say he's a keeper, but I doubt that the Oilers will be able to afford him.
Yeah, I think the market will just be too strong. So I think we agree there.
Evan Bouchard's contract. What do you think is reasonable? Like if you woke up tomorrow morning and it's signed and this is the number and the term, are you good? Let's say 8 years at $10 million a year. Is that okay with you, Kurt?
Yes, it is. Everybody will wish it was less because you want to stretch your dollars as much as you can. I don't think there's a much better offensive defenseman in the league than Evan Bouchard. I think he has a strong case for making Team Canada this year for the Olympics. And he has shown us in back-to-back long Stanley Cup playoff runs that he can defend adequately, if not better. This kind of defenseman with this kind of production, with this kind of tools, who apparently wants to be here, I'd lock him up. It would be nice if you could get the AAV down with longer term, but by the sounds of it, it's going to take at least $10 million to get him signed. I wouldn't screw around with qualifying or any of that garbage. I'd sign him before Sunday to 8 years times 10.
Yeah. Brian Lawton was on Oilers Now and said he thinks he'll be an offer sheet. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting with the three best players on the team. The kind of the unique dilemma that they face in terms of how much money they take. And every dollar that they take means they're less likely to win a Stanley Cup. And because that's how the cap works. It's the same for every player on the team. It's just that the top players could actually get a lot more. But it's funny, like if you think about it, so Bouchard, if he was to get $10 million here, he could maybe get 11 or 12 somewhere else. But if, let's say, who else is on our list? Jeff Skinner, he could get, let's say, $1 million here, but or Corey Perry, he could get $1 million here, but $2 million somewhere else. For Corey Perry, that $1 million is a much huger percentage of his.
It's double.
It's 50%.
Yeah.
Double. It's double, excuse me. And for Bouchard, it's just like it's 11, 12% higher. So in some ways, like they're going to make so much money over the course of their career. It's a kind of a terrible litmus test on how much they want to win the Stanley Cup in terms of how much they're willing to shave off their maximum. Now, Connor McDavid's been doing it for years. He could have got the maximum on his last contract. He's been taking millions less every single year. Every single year. He's the only player, because Leon Draisaitl got the maximum he could have got on his contract. Darnell Nurse pushed it to the limit, got the maximum. Those guys in their contracts, they got the maximum at the time they could get, I think. This is different for all three players. I think Draisaitl could have got more if he signed in another city, if he didn't sign with the Oilers. Bouchard could and McDavid could. I still like that number that Frank Saravalli threw out a year ago, 10 for Bouch, 14 for Draisaitl, and 16 for McDavid. I'd actually really like to see McDavid say, hey, Draisaitl's taking 14, I'll take 14. That would be a huge, and I think it's a possibility, because when we're talking about a player who's going to make over $200 million in his career, does it really make that much if in the next, let's say, 5 years, he earned $10 million more? You know, when instead of earning 5 times 14, he earned 5 times 16. Maybe it does. And only he can answer that. And I won't judge him either way. In fact, I won't judge Connor McDavid if he decides not to sign at Edmonton. He's given his all for the Oilers. He can decide what he wants. I'll be good with it. But, and even if it's a cruel litmus test, it is a test. And other players like Sidney Crosby have taken considerably less than they could have taken. And they did that to win the cup. So we'll see. And he will only do that. I think it's only fair for McDavid to do that if he thinks the Oilers are the team that can help him win the cup. Like, he's got to be convinced of that. Maybe he's seen enough that he's not. And if he decides that, again, I'm okay with that. But if he does decide this is the team he's going to hitch his wagon to and try to win the cup with, what he receives is hugely important. Because, Kurt, when you look at the history and the salary cap era of teams that have won the cup, teams that have had players, for their top 4 players who are earning more than, let's say, 45% of the cap, there's only been 1 or 2 in the cap era that have won the cup. It is really hard when you start to concentrate all of that money in the very top players on your team. It becomes extremely difficult to win the cup. That's not going to change. And so I'm hoping that it's the 10, 14, 16 solution for Bouchard, Draisaitl, and McDavid. I'm hoping even, like, my fondest wish would be 10, 14, 14. But I'll be okay with 10, 14, 16. And I'm hoping to see that. So for Bouchard, 8 years at $10 million, I think it's a bargain for the Oilers. They should jump on that. And he's been by far their best of two-way defenseman in the playoffs the last 2 years. It's not close. He has been by far their best. And he is one of the only players on the Oilers who has improved his two-way play in the playoffs compared to the regular season. He's cranked it up. Very few players are capable of achieving that. He does it. He's got alligator blood, this guy, and he starts to become a much better defensive player and a sharper offensive player in the postseason. The guy is money. He's money. And they got to sign him, and I think they will.
Well, he's elite, right? And I know that makes the head spin off some Oilers fans, but just the numbers don't lie. And if you look at the fantasy stats through the playoffs, it's not close. Like he was on fire. Yeah. And so Do I get frustrated over Evan Bouchard from time to time? You bet. That doesn't prevent me from thinking that he's one of the best offensive defensemen in the NHL, well above average two-way defender. And if you don't have Evan Bouchard, you're not winning the Stanley Cup in Edmonton. I'll say that.
You are not. Hey, we one guy that we didn't have on the list, Connor Brown.
Oh.
Keep, hold, or fold.
Yeah, he's the guy, and I always want to be honest and upfront. He's one of the guys in the article I said, you got to be careful how much you're going to pay for a guy who should probably be on your fourth line. Right? I have no issue with Connor Brown. I think he gives it everything he has. He came back from a major injury, took a long time for him to kind of hit his stride, got hurt again in the playoffs, and I give him all sorts of credit for trying to play through it. But at the end of the day, he can't be in your top 6. I don't think he's in your top 9. So then can he be a fourth line player in this team? He can, because he can still really skate. He's got some touch. He can kill penalties. I've got some time for Connor Brown, but he's got to be a role player for you. From what I understand from Brown is that the AAV isn't the sticking point. He's looking for a bit of term because he's coming off, I think it's back-to-back one-year contracts. And so,
Yeah.
hey, I can't blame him looking for a bit of stability for his family. I don't mind that, but it has to be for the right price point, right? So,
if it's the Janmark contract, like 3 years at 1.45, I'd say yes. Like,
yeah,
especially with the new cap. Listen, he played great hockey from like March on, and until he got hurt. Then after he got hurt, he was really weak in the playoffs. He just was not getting it done, not even close.
Yeah, just
but
wasn't
until
himself.
that vicious headshot from Numbnuts there on Dallas to Brown, he was playing great. He was really, and I think he had a broken foot at that point. He was flying out there, and I like the player a lot. So if I hope they can work it out, but if it starts to get towards $2 million a year, it's like, geez. That said, they need good players to win the cup.
Yep.
If the cap space is there, it depends on their. But he's part of a forward group that I think it can win in the playoffs, and I think I could see him doing that for the next couple of years.
Yeah, like Kapanen, he's got the wheels, right? Like he skates like a young man when he's healthy, and I think that counts for a lot. I think I probably see him very similarly to the way that you do, Dave.
The goalies, Kurt. There's a lot of Bowman has identified it now as an area he's looking at. What do you think should happen?
Thought about this a lot, and as I prefaced at the start of the podcast, I've spent the better part of 2 seasons defending Stuart Skinner, and I don't apologize for that. For the longest time, I was really struggling with this because I thought, God, do you move on from the guy who's never really been able to hang on to the number 1 job? Do you move on from the guy who's come and practically rescued your season 2 years in a row in Calvin Pickard? But then I kind of came to a bit of an epiphany. It doesn't have to be an either or. Calvin Pickard's under contract for no money, right? I think, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I do think they need to try something different in net. To borrow a phrase that you used at some point in the playoffs, David, I think someone needs to be brought in to challenge him, to be a 1B to his 1A or vice versa. And either he drives Stuart Skinner to be a true number 1, or the guy takes over the crease and never looks back. And if there's an injury, well, you already know what Calvin Pickard could give you. And given the quality of Calvin Pickard, I can't think of anybody else who would be better to shepherd a young goaltender in Bakersfield if he's not in the NHL. So my vote is yes, you got to bring in another goaltender. I think you have to tick that box. You've got to cross that item off the grocery list of reasons why you didn't win a Stanley Cup. Here's the tough thing, though. Nobody's given good goalies away. And who is the goaltender out there who is at least as good as Stuart Skinner? I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah. I was hoping they would trade Kane for a goalie. Now there's a chance they'll trade Arvidsson in some kind of deal for John Gibson of Anaheim. And now Gibson earns too much. Like there have to be serious salary retention either from Anaheim and another team, maybe even to have Gibson make sense. So it could be him. Vancouver's got a lot of goalies. Artur Silov just helped them win he was great helping them win Abbotsford, the AHL championships. They've got Lankinen and Demko. There's a guy called Di Pietro that Low Tide was writing about. Essentially, I think they could bring in two goalies. They could bring in the best. They need another AHL goalie. They could bring in the best veteran AHL goalie they can find, like the guy who's been crushing it, like this Di Pietro guy, crushing it in the AHL, or Seelovs, and then maybe they can try to bring in trade for there's trade for Gibson. There's the New Jersey goalie, what's his name, who's a free agent that everyone's been talking about. I don't know if he's the answer, but I do think it's the logic of Ray Ferraro that persuaded me on this. It's that if you don't do anything and things go sideways again, it could get really toxic. And for the players, for the team, it's just like you got to scratch that itch, whether it's right or wrong. And I think Stan Bowman's right. It really is voodoo, because they did get better goaltending. These two unheralded goaltenders, earning much less money, were better than Aiden Hill and Jake Ottinger.
Yep.
Two well-known goalies. Aiden Hill was on Team Canada. Jake Ottinger was on Team USA. The Oilers goalies outplayed them. So keep Skinner and Pickard. You don't have to get rid of them, but bring in another guy or two.
Yeah.
An AHL quality guy and an NHL quality guy, and see what happens from there.
My thing though is you can't just bring in a backup. That's what Calvin Pickard is already. He's already a good NHL backup.
No,
he's not really a 1B, right? He's a backup. That's not good enough. That's just another body. They need, that's as I said, they need someone at least as good as Skinner. And here's a couple things. John Gibson, I understand Anaheim really wants to make the playoffs this year. I don't know why they would get rid of John Gibson if that's their goal. When Thatcher Demko is healthy, I think he's a top. Yeah, when Thatcher Demko is healthy, I think he's a top 10 NHL goaltender. Problem is he's never healthy, and I don't know why Vancouver would trade him within the division anyway. But at least Demko healthy is a better goaltender than Stuart Skinner, right? I've yet to hear a bunch of names out there that are, and that's why I'm for the process. I'm for the process, but I've yet to see the name that goes, aha, he's the guy. So we'll see.
I'd rather have Lankinen than Demko, considering Demko's injury history. Jake Allen is the unrestricted free agent. He's 34 from New Jersey, so that's kind of
he's a backup goaltender. He's just. You really think Jake Allen's going to take you to the promised land? It's no offense to Jake Allen, but like he's not a better goaltender than Stuart Skinner is, right? So
I think there's a chance. The problem with Skinner is 3 years in a row his save percentage has gone down. He's getting worse. Like it's not working out. Like he's not getting more consistent. He's getting less consistent.
And this year the Oilers' blue line was better, so it was Yeah.
You need to bring in a goalie who will challenge Stuart Skinner. I think
you do need to try it. I agree with that. Yeah.
So,
but I also don't think you could give up with your 26-year-old homegrown goaltender either. So.
No, so don't people always like when they always go to the either or. I think, why do you do that? Like you can keep Skinner, you can keep Pickard. Pickard can go to the HL. He might even clear waivers. He probably would. So it's like, there's options here. Then you don't have to move on from Skinner.
Yeah, and Skinner's still at just 2.6, right? I mean, on a cap challenge team, that's really valuable.
Exactly, Kurt. Right. So if you bring in a goalie who's $4 or $5 million, then
somebody else has
to. And then you bring in one or two more forwards, like an aggressive forward for your third or fourth line. and then as good a forward as you can for your top six, where there's the other need. So I think it's a top six winger and a goalie that are the two big needs right now, and they don't have a lot of money in that regard. I mean, I heard on Oilers now throwing around the name, speculating on Brock Besser. Like,
who's going to pay him?
Good luck with that. I don't.
I'd have
Comes
him
here on a 1-year deal because he wants to win the cup or some crazy thing.
Sure,
like,
but
people will take less to play in Edmonton. I think,
but Brock Besser
they're not going to take a lot less.
He wouldn't take less than $6 million to play here. Why would he?
I agree. I don't think it's possible. So I'm not putting a lot of faith in that idea. Anyway, Kurt, we got the draft coming up. Not a lot of action in the draft for the Oilers, and then we have free agency day. This is it's a fraught time for the Oilers, and I'm reminded of last year where Jeff Jackson, in the end, how it all turned out. We didn't know it at the time. We only knew how his summer turned out after the Holloway and Broberg offer sheets. It was a disaster for the Oilers, I'm going to say, what happened last summer. And I didn't realize it at the time, as it was like, I didn't, like when Fogle was leaving and McLeod was leaving, I could see I liked Arvidsson. I'd seen him really good in the playoffs for LA. I thought he was really good. I was a little not so Skinner. I didn't really know what to think about that. But they just we got to get wingers for Draisaitl. We got to get wingers for Draisaitl. And here, okay, Arvidsson and Skinner. And man, it just didn't work out at all. So
I'm feeling a little more confident this year for one reason. It is Stan Bowman's first full year on the job, and he's not a rookie GM. He knows what he's doing, and I haven't minded the moves that he has done since he has come online. Some fans either don't know or conveniently forget the line that's drawn between Jeff Jackson serving as GM and Stan Bowman actually getting here. I think the fact that I don't think Stan even took summer holidays. I think he went straight to work. I think that for all that talk that they weren't going to rush into negotiations and conversations with Connor McDavid, I think they started like 2 or 3 days later. So it's I think he understands the weight and the enormity of the task before him.
Yeah. I think in retrospect, and this is hindsight, complete hindsight, 2020 hindsight, they should have matched on Holloway, and it was a mistake not to. And even if that put them in an iffy cap situation heading into the year, they could have just thought, whatever happens with Kane, there'll be other injuries, and we'll figure it out. If we have to move someone out, we'll do it. But we need to keep this young power forward on the team. And anyway, that's hindsight, because I didn't say that at the time. I didn't say that was a mistake to match on Holloway. But in hindsight, I think that is the fact of the matter.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't say it at the time either, so I don't pretend to be revisionist. I don't want to be revisionist, rather. And as you know, I was always a Holloway fan, so, and never as much for Broberg.
Yes,
so
you were, Kurt.
Yeah. So yeah, you can argue that summer that so many of us thought was so great, David, in the end might have actually cost the team a cup.
It's interesting, because they did seem to be a better team against Dallas and Vegas than they've ever been before. Like, they just look great in dispatching both those really good teams in, what was it, 5 games each? Mm-hmm. It's amazing, right? Like, they were so good. But the matchup against Florida and the refereeing, it just didn't work the same way. The Oilers fell apart. They came apart at the seams psychologically in that series. And it was tough to watch, actually. So were they a worse team, or were they a better team, or were they just a worse matchup for Florida? Or did that the incredibly bad refereeing totally blow their minds and throw them off? Yeah. I don't have the answers to these questions at all, but
were they a worse team that played better for a while?
I do feel like they lost a lot of speed. Pardon me? Sorry.
Were they a worse team that played better for a while?
Yeah, it's hard to know. It's just they really were better than they had been against Dallas, and they really were better than they had been against Vegas. So they were. I thought they were going to beat Florida. I thought they'd beat the toughest team when they beat Dallas, and
Well, I think if they'd won in
Florida just
overtime
got
in
such a
game 2, they
huge
would have.
boost from Bones and Marchand. Maybe, maybe. We'll never know. They didn't. All right, Kurt. Oh, I should mention this past weekend was Bruce McCurdy's celebration of life. It's
Yeah.
online on YouTube, I believe. You can go to Kevin McCurdy's Twitter X account, and there's a link to the ceremony. It was a fantastic celebration of Bruce. Such a great guy.
And
And
David, your
very
words.
impressive. Alan Mitchell, low tide. Go ahead. Sorry, Kurt.
Yeah, no, I was going to say your words were excellent and delivered with heart. And Bruce would have been very pleased to hear all the great things that you said about him.
Yeah. And now it's time to turn the misery of losing Bruce into gratitude for having known him. And that's what the celebration of life was all about. So we'll go from there.
Agreed.
All right, Kurt, thanks for talking.
It was a pleasure.
And in the meantime, and in between time, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.